Donald Trump has spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't.
No, it's not that I've gotten old. It's that your ideas are stupid. Okay,
common sense is still common sense.
Yes, common sense is common sense, and I'm going to call it out wherever it is on the spectrum.
Bill Maher just lit CNN on fire, and he didn't even raise his voice. While the network melted down over Trump like it's 2016 all over again, Maher sat back, sipped his truth tea, and calmly exposed the clown show for what it is: a desperate ratings grab masked as journalism. If you thought CNN couldn't get more unhinged, wait until you see what Bill said right to their face. Spoiler, he didn't hold back.
So I'm not going to chase every rabbit down the hole like I did the first term. That's what I mean about he's not going to get my mind. He's a kooky guy who says a lot of kooky things, and I'm just not going to pre-hate anything. I'm just going to hope for the best, and then when something serious happens, I'll comment on that.
Right out of the gate, Maher went on the offensive, setting the tone for what was to come: calm, collected, but razor sharp. He made it clear that unlike CNN, he's not here to twist every Trump moment into an apocalyptic meltdown. Maher isn't playing the media's game of hyperventilating over headlines or obsessively nitpicking Trump's every word. Instead, he calls out the hysteria for what it is: manufactured outrage masquerading as journalism, and he's not afraid to say it live on air. Realizing Maher was in no mood for a bout of Trump derangement syndrome, the host quickly shifted the topic to Biden.
So I'm writing an election book, and one of the things I just stumbled on was a monologue you gave in October 2023, in which you warned the Democratic Party of Ruth Bader Biden. You were saying the American people think he's too old. You're worried about this. You had a great line about it doesn't matter if he's a national treasure and has done great things. If you got on an airplane and you heard that Buzz Aldrin was the pilot, you'd get off. I'm sorry for botching your very funny joke. But they didn't listen to you, but you were proven correct.
Bill Maher is without a doubt one of the sharpest comedians and one of the most brutally honest voices in American media. Watch how he gets an entire CNN panel to do a complete 180 and suddenly start talking about Biden. But that's just the beginning. While every Democrat blindly echoed the narrative that Biden was perfectly fit to run, Maher stood nearly alone on the left, warning of the disaster ahead if Biden remained on the ticket. And look how that aged like milk in the sun. Now the same people who dismissed him are scrambling to rewrite history. But Maher's receipts are loud, clear, and impossible to ignore.
And I felt I had standing to make that case because I had for so many years been the only person I know on television who was consistently railing against ageism. I have been saying for years, ageism is the last allowable prejudice that we can have in this country. You can always do the age jokes. You can always rail on people for being too old. And it was, as I said, a case-by-case basis. Some people at 70 act like they're 100 years old, and some people are like 40-year-olds. But this was a case, okay, where Biden was too old. Having made that case that it's a case-by-case basis, I was now saying, yes, some of those cases are that the person just is too old for the job. And he was going to be, much like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, someone who was seen in history as one who stayed at the fair too long and cost his party dearly, and he did.
Jake Tapper was clearly expecting Maher to unleash a Trump tirade with the same fire he used on Biden. But Maher refused to take the bait. Instead of joining the media echo chamber, he calmly sidestepped the setup and dropped a truth bomb. He doesn't think Trump is the cartoon villain CNN and MSNBC make him out to be. That moment froze the room. Maher wasn't there to pander, he was there to tell the uncomfortable truth no one else would say.
Donald Trump has spent a lot of time criticizing you. You told me a couple years ago on air that you were afraid of what Trump could theoretically do if he ever were returned to the White House. How do you feel now?
Yeah, it's possible. Do I think he's going to start arresting comedians? I don't, but it's possible. And look, anything's possible with this guy. I'll put it this way. When George Bush was in the White House, it never even entered my mind. Never entered my mind that I couldn't say whatever I wanted to say without repercussions. And that's one of the great things about living in America. And we take America for granted and that kind of stuff, and maybe we can't anymore. So we'll see. But am I going to let it affect what I do? No. I mean, the day I feel like I can't say what I want without going to Guantanamo Bay, I'll just leave.
This could serve as a much-needed lesson for CNN. Maybe, just maybe, it's time they stop the relentless pre-hating and let the facts speak for themselves. After years of calling Trump everything from a fascist to Hitler incarnate, what's left in the insult arsenal? They've thrown every label imaginable, dialed the outrage up to 11, and still half the country tuned them out. At some point, constant hysteria becomes background noise. Instead of jumping the gun with knee-jerk criticism, perhaps they should take a breath, wait for an actual misstep, and respond with credibility, not desperation. Maher's approach proves that restraint and honesty can land harder than outrage. Maybe it's time CNN swapped panic for perspective before they lose whatever shred of trust they still have left. So Bill Maher didn't just survive CNN's ambush, he exposed it with calm defiance and unfiltered honesty. He flipped the script on a network desperate to paint Trump as the boogeyman while ignoring Biden's glaring flaws. Maher refused to parrot their talking points, challenged their hypocrisy, and showed what real intellectual independence looks like. He reminded viewers that truth doesn't have a political party, and that blind loyalty, whether to Biden or anti-Trump hysteria, is the real danger. If CNN wants to stay relevant, they might want to take notes, because Maher just gave them a free masterclass in integrity.
I do want to ask you before you go, and congratulations again on the special, but there's talk promulgated by you about maybe you quitting the HBO show, about maybe not touring anymore. Well, you said something to Jane Fonda about thinking about that. Where are you in your career? You still got a lot of good stand-up, a lot of good jokes in you, right? Like, tell us what's next.
Okay. I am stopping doing stand-up just because I'm tired of touring. Just because I've been doing it for 40 years. I love it. Look, I love nothing more than being on stage somewhere telling jokes to strangers. It's been my entire life. It's been the most consistent thing in my life. I don't know where this started about getting rid of real time. They're going to have to drag me off of that show. What I was saying was that I didn't want to do another Trump term. Not just because I don't think it's going to be possibly a great time for America. Maybe, again, not going to pre-hate anything. But because I've already done all the jokes.
What makes this even more powerful is that Maher is saying all of this directly to the CNN host's face. He's not whispering behind the scenes, he's calling out the game live on air. And the truth is, mainstream media is fueled by ratings, and ratings are fueled by outrage. Trump coverage, especially the negative kind, sells like wildfire. So these networks obsessively criticize and demonize him, not necessarily out of principle, but out of fear that ignoring him would tank their viewership. But Maher, he couldn't care less about ratings. He's not chasing clicks or pandering to an algorithm. That's why so many people across political lines now turn to Maher as a rare voice of reason. He's blunt, unfiltered, and not afraid to torch the narrative in real time.
What's your response when people tell you that, and you must hear this a lot, that they get that you're one of their primary sources of information?
Flattered, and as it should be, is my response. I feel like people are looking for something that is not slanted. I mean, I certainly have lost fans over the years because I don't say the things that please people all the time, but that's my ultimate bond with the audience. When I lose people, it's like, okay, well, you were never meant to be with me in the first place.
Yeah.
We can't have a relationship.
No Maher interview would be complete without the comedian and talk show host taking a blowtorch to the left's obsession with wokeness. True to form, he didn't hold back. Maher has long warned that the Democratic Party's fixation on identity politics, cancel culture, and virtue signaling has alienated everyday Americans. And let's face it, that ideological overreach was a major factor in their embarrassing performance last November. While Democrats were busy policing pronouns and chasing social justice trends, voters were focused on real-world issues like inflation, crime, and border chaos. Maher's been saying it for years. The left's cultural extremism is pushing moderates and independents straight into the arms of the GOP. He's not anti-liberal, he's anti-delusion. And when he says wokeness is political poison, he's not trying to win applause, he's warning the left before they crash and burn again. It's raw, uncomfortable truth, but Maher's never been afraid of that.
Democrats sometimes can take it too far, or I would categorize liberal as different than woke. Woke, which started out as a good thing, alert to injustice, who could be against that, but it became sort of an eye roll because they love diversity except of ideas. And that's not really where we should be. I mean, they have a trail of very bad ideas, I would think, in wokeness.
Absolutely, Maher made a critical point, one that too many on the left still refuse to acknowledge. Wokeness is the undoing of liberalism. He draws a sharp, necessary distinction between classic liberalism and the toxic brand of woke ideology that's taken over much of today's discourse. And he's doing it for the younger generation, making sure they aren't duped into believing the two are the same, because they're not. Liberalism at its core once stood for free speech, open debate, individual liberty, and the pursuit of truth. But wokeness, it demands conformity, silences dissent, and thrives on emotional outrage rather than rational dialogue. Maher is sounding the alarm because he sees what many won't admit. This ideology is eroding the very foundation liberalism was built on. If the left continues to conflate progressivism with censorship and victimhood culture, they'd risk losing the very soul of their movement. And Maher's not letting that happen without a fight.
How do you define wokeness? Because I hear people use the term all the time, and it means something different to everybody.
Well, again, I think it's this collection of ideas that are not building on liberalism, but very often undoing it. I mean, 5 years ago, Abraham Lincoln was not a controversial figure among liberals. We liked him. Now they take his name off schools and tear down his statues. Really? Lincoln isn't good enough for you? 5-10 years ago, bedrock liberalism was we are striving to be a colorblind society where we don't see race. Of course, we see it, but it doesn't matter. That's not what woke is. Woke is something very different. It's identity politics. We see it all the time. It's always the most important thing. I don't think that's liberalism. I mean, I could mention so many issues like that. I remember doing that show on HBO, Comic Relief for the Homeless, and the idea then, again, among liberals, I thought was, for the sake of compassion, can we get these people off the street so they have a roof over their heads? And now it's like, how dare you try to move the homeless? This is where they live.
Exactly. Common sense is just that, common sense. But apparently, the woke media missed the memo. Instead of grounding their reporting in logic, facts, and fairness, they chase whatever trendy, performative narrative will earn them the most clicks, likes, and outrage-fueled attention. They're not interested in truth, they're addicted to engagement. And in the process, they pander to the loudest, most extreme voices, even if it means alienating the average American or trampling over basic reality. What's worse is that they don't care who they hurt along the way. Honest dialogue, gone. Nuance, canceled. These outlets will villainize someone today and pretend it never happened tomorrow, all in the name of staying relevant. Maher calls this out not because he's conservative, but because he values intellectual integrity. That's why people across the spectrum are tuning into him, because he says what others are too scared to say, and because he still believes that truth should matter more than trendiness. And that brings us to the end of today's video. If you enjoyed our narration, then hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.